How's it going? My name is Jakub. I'm a music producer from Indianapolis, Indiana, and today I'm going to be going over recreating one of Radiohead's most iconic synth patches on the Behringer DeepMind 12. Let's get into it. Kid A was Radiohead's fourth studio album, which they released on October 2nd, 2000. The album represents a major stylistic shift for the band, moving away from more traditional rock-oriented instrumentation towards something a lot more abstract and electronically driven. The album's intro track, titled Everything in Its Right Place, sets the tone immediately, starting with a super wide and immersive synth pad that has since become one of the most easily recognizable and iconic in synthesizer history. Documentation and footage from the sessions suggest that this sound most likely came from a Prophet 5 synthesizer by Sequential Circuits. However, even if you have your own Prophet 5 at home, you'll find that you'll struggle to capture the width and warmth of the sound actually heard on the record. This is because, in recording that sound, Radiohead took two recordings from the Prophet 5 synth, panning one hard to the right and another hard to the left, to create the illusion of a very wide stereo field. So while you can't capture the width of that sound on a Prophet 5, you can capture the width of that sound on a Behringer DeepMind 12. In this video, I'm going to be explaining how to do that on the DeepMind 12, and by the end of it, we should have a patch that sounds just like the one heard on Everything in Its Right Place. Please enjoy. The DeepMind 12 has stereo outputs, which you can see by the two wires back here, and 12 voices, which you can see by the 12 LEDs over here on the right. And so as a result, all kinds of cool stereo tricks are possible on this thing. However, not all of them are obvious or easily accessible. So let's go through a few of them. I'll start by initializing a new patch. And I guess let's just focus on saw waves for now. The first of these methods is going to be the pan spread parameter, which you can find by hitting the edit button underneath the VCA section. Scrolling down, you see pan spread, which is by default set to 0. While it's at 0, everything is dead mono, right in the center. But if we turn that value up to its maximum of 127, what will happen is the lower voice numbers will be panned all the way to the left, and the higher voice numbers will be panned increasingly to the right. So let's see how that sounds. So for that chord, you saw the voices allocated were all on the right side, so the chord overall was panned to the right. Let's play another. For that chord, most of the voices selected were on the left, so we heard it biased over to the left side, right? Now, of course, if we flip pan spread to a negative value, the opposite rules apply, where lower voice numbers are panned to the right and higher voice numbers are panned to the left. Right, so that's very useful. That's definitely the quickest method to getting some stereo width into your sound. But a major drawback is that as you hold a note, the stereo position that voice starts at is fixed. It does not move in space as you hold the note. Now, a method that I talked about a lot in my previous video fixes this issue. In order to access this, you have to dive into the mod matrix. This is all going to rely on the VCA pan parameter, which I found right here. If you map something like, say, LFO1 to the VCA pan of your voice, you'll hear that it starts to swim in space. And I think that sounds really nice for a lot of pads, right? However, neither of these get us to the hard panned sound that we're looking for in our patch, right? So the last and most interesting of these methods, I think, is the Uni Voice mod source, which you can find by diving into the mod matrix, scrolling all the way to the end of the list and going back a few clicks until you see Uni Voice in your source slot, right? Until recently, I had no idea what this mod source did, and that's because it's pretty unclear how you're supposed to use it if you're in the polypolyphony mode. My understanding of this source is that it's meant to be used in poly modes that have more than one voice allocated per key. For example, unison 2, unison 3, mono 2, mono 3, things like that. So generally speaking, what the Uni Voice mod source does is it allows you to modulate voices allocated to a certain key independently from one another, right? So let's say, for example, we're in unison 2. we select Uni Voice as our mod source, and we go ahead and select, let's say, oscillator 1 and 2 pitch from our destinations menu, right? I'll play just a note, and you'll see 2 notes light up, but you'll hear no difference yet. As I start to dial in some depth, check out what happens. At a depth of 7, the second voice is playing transposed up 7 semitones from the original note we're playing. So what happens if you're in a polyphony mode with even more notes allocated per key, or more voices allocated per key? So like in unison 3, for example, what's going to happen is at a depth of 7, the first voice will be at the original pitch, the second voice will be at the depth divided by 2, right? So 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. And then the third voice will be at the depth. And that gives us a pretty bad sounding minor major chord because the third is right in between that E and E flat if we're playing a C. But if we play an interval that does divide into 3 nicely, like say a minor 7th, we'll get some stacked fourths because a fourth falls directly between these 2 notes. So I think that's pretty cool. And this expands if you go, unison 4, unison 6, so on and so forth. The same principles apply. But we're going to stick to unison 2 because I want to show you how to achieve that hard panned Radiohead everything in its right place sound using this mod source. Instead of mapping uni voices to oscillator 1 and 2 pitch, we're actually going to map it to, of course, VCA pan. So check out what happens in unison 2 when I play with this mapping. I definitely recommend headphones if you're looking to hear this clearly. But what's going on is that the first voice is being panned left and the second voice is being panned right. So through my own testing, I realized that this mapping at its full depth doesn't actually pan all the way. It gets you some of the way there. But if you want it hard panned left and right, you actually have to repeat the same mapping in a second modulation slot. So let's go ahead and do that. VCA pan right there. So now when I play a chord, you'll hear the first voice will be panned all the way to the left and the second voice will be panned all the way to the right, giving us the same effect as if we had recorded this patch twice, hard panned one take left, hard panned the other take right, and then played them at the same time, which is exactly what they did on everything in its right place. So check this out. Again, if you've got headphones on, you can surely hear just how wide and in your face this mapping gets you. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to go ahead and recreate the everything in its right place patch on the DeepMind 12 in real time. So going to go ahead and initialize a new patch by holding program and compare at the same time. Now, right off the bat, there's a bit of a point of contention I see online when looking at how to recreate this. Some people use the sawtooth, other people, I would say most people, use the pulse wave. I can see that on the Prophet 5, I think the pulse wave gets you really close. I think that's what you're actually going to hear on the record, that pulse wave with a narrow pulse. However, I couldn't get the pulse to sound exactly the way it does on the record, and I honestly think on the DeepMind 12 at least, that the sawtooth sounds closer to the original record and just sounds better overall. Especially when you get further into the track and the filter starts to open, it really sounds like a sawtooth to my ear on this synth. So I'm going to go with the sawtooth off the bat. Oscillator 2 is not going to be involved. No noise, so we're going to leave those alone. Let's go ahead and get into our polyphony. So like I was talking about earlier, we're going to use unison 2 here, and we're going to use that exact trick that I showed earlier where we select uni voice on modulation slots 1 and 2, map it with full depth to the VCA pan in both slots. So I'm gonna get that dialed in really quick while you wait. Same thing in slot 2, and boom. So already, it kind of sounds the way it does later on in the song when the filter is opened up. And if you've got headphones in, you can hear all that width that we've achieved with this mapping here, right? So let's go ahead over to the VCF, right? So frequency and resonance is going to be all the way down, right? But the envelope is going to be, the envelope control of the filter is going to be like about 40%. It's going to be very, very low, right? But that'll get altered later on. LFO control is going to be all the way down, but keyboard tracking is going to be all the way up. You can hear while Tom or Johnny or whoever's playing the Prophet in the actual recording is playing, that C at the very top of their chord really shines through. In fact, we actually have to go further than just using this keyboard slider. We have to go into the mod matrix and assign note number, if I can find note number, all the way over to the envelope control. And we're going to do that with a depth of, I think about 50. Let me listen. That sounds about right. I think this needs to be a bit higher for now, though, just so we can hear it. Bring that back down. Yeah. We really want this C to shine through and have a more open filter than the other notes, because that's the constant between all these chords, right? So let's go ahead and dial in the envelopes, and then we'll come back to this in a little bit. I will note that we're not using any pan spread in the VCA menu because we've already got that stereo width from the Uni Voice mapping that we did. So the VCA is going to be pretty standard. Zero attack, we want that to be immediate. Maybe a decay around 200. Let me look at this so we can actually see the values. VCA around 200, at least from my notes. And the sustain at about 160, right? And let's, just for now, I'm going to open this up so we can hear what we're doing better. Maybe a little more release than we're getting, just a touch. Nice, okay. Maybe a touch more. Now I'm just listening. Cool. All right, over to the VCF envelope. Same zero attack. Going to be a pretty high sustain level, right? Over 200 for sure. And then a pretty quick decay, or maybe a moderate decay, actually. I don't know. Let me listen. This will be pretty important because once the filter is opened and the resonance is up, which we'll do later with the mod wheel, you'll really hear this filter fall as like the main characteristic of the sound. So this will be important. We might want to dial it in more precisely later when we've got the mod wheel set up. But lastly, if you listen to the recording, there's a lot of clicking. There's a strong click on the attack of the sound, and we're going to use the mod envelope rather to set that up. If you want to click envelope, you just set attack, decay, and everything to 0. And what that gives you is a really, really short attack and decay into nothing. And so what we can do is hop to the mod matrix and map envelope 3, which is that click, to two different things. We're going to map it first to the filter cutoff right here. And we're going to do that by just a little bit, because if you go too far, it starts to get out of hand. Bring that down. Especially with more than one note. But we're going to do the same thing with the resonance as well. And this we're going to push all the way, if it actually listens to me. There we go. See, now you see that we actually need less on the previous mapping. Might be still a bit much. There's a little bit more character on the attack if we've done that. So now let's go ahead and dial in the mod wheel so that we can slowly open it up as we're playing to simulate how the filter opens up throughout the song. So the first thing I'll do is map the mod wheel to the envelope here, envelope control on the filter. Gonna go ahead and leave the mod wheel all the way up so that we can hear the proper place to put this. I'll start all the way open. Not too much. This is how it's gonna sound when the filter's completely open. I want to dial it in right to where you start to hear the filter close. I think that's right there. Nice. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the resonance. I'm going to add a little bit of resonance as we open the filter because I really want to be able to hear how the filter falls as we hold notes. And the resonance is going to really just identify that to our ear. So I'll dial in the resonance right there. We're going to add, let me listen. I'll set it to like 50 and see how that sounds. Surely that's too much. Okay. The release on the filter is bugging me. I think I'm gonna need more release. Yeah, Okay, sorry. That sounds a lot better now. What I've done is I've just extended the release on the VCF envelope to more closely match that of the decay on the filter envelope. So they decay and release at similar rates now, so it's a little more natural sounding. Anyways, sorry, so now as I open up the mod wheel, not only will the filter open up, but also the resonance will go up. So that's with it closed. That's with it open. We're still not getting enough of a fall though. And so what I want to have happen is when I've opened up this mod wheel, I also want the sustain level of the VCF envelope to come down so that the filter cutoff frequency can fall further as I hold the note. Because right now it doesn't get to move that much. So let's go ahead and do this last mapping where we map the mod wheel to the envelope to sustain. I did decay by accident. Sustain is what we want. And we're going to have that be a negative mapping because as the mod wheel opens, I want the sustain level to fall, right? So let's set that to negative 80. I think that's what my notes say. Check in a sec. Yeah, that's about what we want. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is dial in our compression. So listening to the record, you can definitely tell that the pad is pretty compressed. It's very warm, it's in your face, and we're going to use the DeepMind 12's onboard effects to achieve the same thing, namely the fair compressor right there in the list. First, we'll set send over to insert. Want to make sure our effects are in insert mode. Hop into the compressor and set it from stereo mode to dual mode. And what dual mode's going to do is have an independent compressor working on each channel to kind of help our sense of stereo width that we're getting. Next, we're going to add a good amount of input gain to both channels, setting each one to -1. Bring that all the way up. Bring the thresholds down on each channel to 0, time down to 1 on each channel. I'm going to leave the bias alone and bring the output gain down a little bit to -9 on each channel. Now let's see how that sounds.